that this treaty has been through several negotiating rounds. And yet, although they've taken out the word government, because I've screamed at them and you've screamed at them and everybody's screamed at them, all the mechanisms of government, all the funding sources, the funding streams, as they call them, or funding windows is the latest phrase, sounds very coy, but actually it means ways of raiding the taxpayer's pocket. All of these things are still in place and have not only survived the previous draft, but have been considerably amplified. So what we're looking at is, I'm afraid there's no other way of putting this, it is a worldwide conspiracy by the governing class against the governed, by the big boys against the little guy, by the rich against the poor, by the strong against the weak. And if you're a little guy doing your honest job of work to protect and pay for your family, you have good reason to be very frightened at this moment. And if you think that our kind host and I have been winding each other up and frothing at the mouth about something that's just another global government conspiracy theory, I just have 3 words for you. Read the treaty. As a result of the fuss I've made, there is a chance that by now, if you go on to the UN Framework Convention website, which I think is unfccc.int, then you may be able to find this treaty now in draft, because I have made quite a big stink about it not being immediately available when I asked for it. And I think they have been shamed now into putting this up on the web. It'll probably still be quite hard to find. Why don't you all have a look, if you doubt in any way what I've been saying to you about the magnitude and breadth of the scope of this treaty, the powers and the wealth that it will transfer from you and your country to an alien, unelected, communistic bureaucracy with power to control all free markets worldwide, with the power to levy taxes on every financial transaction that crosses an international border. We're looking at an enormous communistic government which, in its sheer scale, is disproportionate to any conceivable threat from CO2, particularly now that we know by measurement that all of the UN's models were wrong and CO2 is simply harmless. It's an outrage, and I'd like to tell you, if I may, what you should do about it. As soon as you have finished listening to this program, you must dive for the telephone, and you must telephone the US Senate, and you must demand to speak to your senator or to one of his senior staffers. Do not be palmed off with a receptionist, a switchboard operator, a secretary, or an intern. You must speak to a senior staffer or to the senator himself, and you must ring both of the senators for your state, and they'll tell you on the switchboard who those senators are, and you must say the Treaty of Copenhagen shall not pass. The more of you do this, the more vigorously you do it, the more plainly, but always politely, you put your point to your senator and to his senior staff, the more likely it is that the Senate will refuse to ratify this treaty. And even though there are various backdoor ways by which Obama has already said via his staff during the election campaign that he would try to circumvent your Constitution by going round the back and allowing the treaty to be enacted into domestic law by a simple majority of both houses, or simply by signing it by his executive authority and then using his majority on the Supreme Court to say that that's the way the trend in law is moving, and therefore we'll count that as though it were a valid treaty. And the present Supreme Court will do that, you know, if you give it half a chance. And you need to make absolutely sure that your senators are told this treaty shall not pass, so that if any of these backdoor ways of pushing the treaty through against the will of the Senate are tried, the Senate will, if necessary, exercise the power that it has to establish the impeachment of your president if he does try what his staffers said during his campaign for election that he would try. So it's up to you now. You only have 10 days left of being a free country with a constitution of your own. Because once he signs that treaty, and with his Nobel Peace Prize and the millions of keening zombies screaming at him here at Copenhagen, he will sign anything. Once that happens, then it's bye-bye to your Constitution. It's bye-bye to the freedom which America has long been a beacon to the world. It has offered this beacon of freedom to the world. Now you are in immediate peril of losing that freedom. However extreme what I'm saying to you may sound, every word of it is verifiably true. That is the intention of your, and I'm going to call it this, your communist president and your communist administration, your communist science advisor, who only 25 years ago was saying that there would be such a global cooling caused by mankind that ice would accumulate on the Antarctic and it would tilt into the sea and cause a tidal wave bigger than any in human history, wiping out all coastal communities worldwide. Now he says that global warming will cause exactly the same sea level rise and wipe out coastal communities worldwide. All of this is going on. These people are communists. They do not have the best interest of you or your country at heart. I would not normally speak in this way about your elected administration, but frankly, I think you were misled into believing that there was going to be change you could believe in. This is change on a scale that is simply almost unbelievable, but that is what is threatened unless you use your last day of freedom to stop it. Because once this treaty goes through, you can ring your senator, you can vote him in, you can vote him out, you can vote for a different president. It won't make any difference. Once this treaty binds your nation, you will never be free, never be prosperous.
That's another key point is that does the latest treaty still have the wording that there has to be a unanimous vote by all the parties to let your country leave?
At the moment, there is no wording that allows you to leave unilaterally, and therefore the usual provision in international treaties under the Vienna Convention prevails, which is there has to be a unanimous vote of all other parties to let you out.
All right, Lord Monckton.
There are many amendments that needs to be put into this treaty, but of course it isn't yet there, despite our having raised this with previous drafts.
Lord Christopher Monckton, we're coming down to the end. I want to say bye to you here at the break. You've agreed that at the end of Copenhagen to pop back in with a final report. But as you said, this is a complete world government takeover from Ban Ki-moon's own mouth, from the head of the EU's own mouth. This is really happening. Total global control grid. Al Gore says it's not enough. He wants even more of our money. They know it's a fraud. These are piratical thieves. And we are 2 seconds to midnight, as you have so eloquently said. But the fraud has been exposed, but it appears they don't care. They're just going to go forward establishing this carbon dioxide dictatorship. They know that gas is involved in all human activity, all life. And by picking that gas, they have a total dictatorship. I mean, this is the dawn of a new dark age with these control freaks preparing to bring us all in as chattel slaves.